Alright, well, what is up, you guys? I'm now driving to the gym. I finally put my car attachment for the camera I got earlier this year in my car. It was one of the reasons why I got this new camera. I got one of those DJI Osmo Pocket 3s, and it's a smaller form factor, because I have this, like, you can look up even the review that I did for the main camera I was using for like these vlogs on my channel. It's from like 5-6 years ago, though, during the depths of COVID. I got one of those Canon Power Shots, but it's a little bit, that Canon camera is a little bit too big of a form factor to put in my fanny pack and then like go out and about, and it's kind of cumbersome, especially with I feel like the key to good YouTube videos is not always the video, it's really the audio. Like, people don't think about that when they're watching it, but when you're making YouTube videos, that's like a huge deal that I've noticed, is like, if you have bad audio, you could have the most cinematic, high quality edited video, but if the audio is bad, people aren't going to think it's a good video. And so this has the transmitter microphone, and it doesn't need a receiver to plug into the camera in order to go out and about and like do stuff. So I was using the wireless go-to Rode mic, and you can see that in a lot of like the reading streams, and I'm still going to use that. It's good to have like multiple microphones, especially if this hasn't happened yet. Like, if there were another person, I could have two microphones, right? Everybody's mic'd up. But just having that extra receiver and then like the wire, and then holding that while holding the camera selfie style, it was just like weird. So plus, with the smaller form factor, what I was really going to say is that this can attach on a little mount in my car now, which is like, I would have my phone, for instance, and film. Like, I did a couple videos maybe, or like a couple shots using my camera in my car before, like the In Fundamental Forms We Trust video, like the, I don't know if you want to call it like a music video, that was filmed on my iPhone, for instance. But even still, it's just a little bit of a hassle to like record audio using like voice memos, record the video, and then sync it up after, and that's not even guaranteed to work, because the video and audio could be recording at different frame rates, and if I record something longer than like 15 minutes, which I tend to do because I ramble all the time, the audio and video will become out of sync, and then I have to sort of like hack it together and like wait for there to be like moment in the video where I'm not really talking, and then kind of like splice it together. But anyways, going to the gym now. It is Sunday. It's probably, by the time I'm in the parking lot, it's going to be 7:30, and I'm not going to lie to you guys. I've been lifting now for like over a decade. You wouldn't be able to tell if I were wearing clothes. I'm not an elite power lifter. The way I see it is, I sort of started off as like a below average physique, athletic, all stats across the board. I was below average before I started. I didn't start off average, okay? And then I don't have necessarily optimal genes for becoming a huge bodybuilder or something like that. There are things that are like natural advantages, you could say. Like, it's difficult for me to gain weight, so I never really get fat. I never, that's the thing, I never get fat. I'm always super lean. It's really easy for me to shred down. But that's the thing. So, but over the years of lifting, going to the gym is like not even, it just takes very little mental energy for me to go and accomplish. However, the one thing that kind of, I guess, not really holds me back, but the one thing that I sort of have to like get over in my own mind is I don't like when the gym is crowded. Like, it's so inconvenient to go to the gym and to like see all of the squat racks taken and to have to like sit on the side and wait for equipment to be available, kind of thing. And it's, even if all the stuff is open, it's kind of like, I feel like there's a subconscious, unconscious part of my mind where, as social human creatures that we are, it's like my brain is sort of like, you know, are people watching me? Am I doing this? You know, am I going to embarrass myself? You know, maybe I shouldn't go for this, you know, heavier lift or something like that, because maybe I'll fail and there are more people around in the gym, like that kind of thing. Even though it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like, even let's say it's like, oh dude, there's like some hot chick and maybe she like smiles at me or something, and I'll be like, oh dude, I should go and approach this girl or whatever. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Even though in my mind, though, sometimes it still is like, when I don't, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh dude, you're gonna get rejected now, and then the next time that I go to the gym, it's gonna be weird, it's gonna be awkward when I see this girl at the gym who rejected me, and oh, now I should go to the other gym for like a few weeks or something. It's like, even if that happens, it's like, if I'm being honest, most hot girls I never see at the gym again. Like, they only show up once, or like same time that I'm there, our paths intersect, and then it's like they don't go to the gym ever again. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like it doesn't even matter. But I'm at the gym now. If you guys are like insane geo-guessers and are like zooming in on the pixels of my rear view mirror, then maybe you can guess where I'm going to go lift, but I'm not going to film in the gym. So that's just my quick rant. I really hope it's not busy. That's why I like to go really early, right? It's because then there's no one there. And then sometimes they'll be like 8 o'clock and I'll be like, oh no, I'm not going to go to the gym because it's going to be crowded. But what does that even mean? What does that even mean? All right, I'm here. I'm going to have to pack my stuff up, so probably have to go get groceries afterwards. See you in the next one. Another successful Sunday leg day in the Church of Iron on the books. I feel like when I do the hamstring curls, I get a nice upper body pump as well. That's besides the point. I went to the grocery store after. Got some donuts, boy. My cat's watching me. I'm gonna eat this over the sink so I don't get glazing all over the place. Yeah, man. Look at this guy. Look at him. He's going crazy. Uh-oh. This ain't cat food, dog. Anyways, really didn't get anything besides my frozen meals because I got those chicken thighs last week and I didn't make them in the crock pot. Because it takes 4 hours and like my crock pot doesn't have like a timer or anything. So like it's too short to do overnight. And so I can't start it at like 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock because I'm going to go to sleep at like 6:37. It is getting a little bit lighter out a little bit later. But I'm going to make that right now. It was like I said in the last clip. I got to the gym parking lot 7:40. finished in an hour. I even did foam rolling and stuff. And wasn't that crowded. No contention for the squat rack, which is important to me. And then I also have to hard boil some eggs. So now it's like 9:26. So gym and grocery store, put it all away, about 2 hours. That's pretty alright. So yeah. Alright, so I've been sitting here reading for a little over an hour or so. Finished up officially reading 1929 by Andrew Ross Sorkin, and my initial thoughts are good book. It is narrative nonfiction, so that's kind of, for me, two sides of the same coin, double-edged sword, if you will, as far as the pros and cons of the book, just because of my own tastes in books. I tend to like books that are really critical, hard-hitting nonfiction, but it's good for me to read a variety of different types of books and have sort of, I'm not trying to, this isn't necessarily a con, but sort of like not one of my main books as a somewhat lighter, easier read, which 1929 definitely is, but it still is nonfiction, but it's written in a narrative form. And I mentioned this in a previous video, which is 1929 reads like almost a fiction book because of that narrative aspect. So the chapters are relatively short. The pages aren't super dense and long, so you can just kind of like get through it really quickly, relatively speaking. But, so it's like, that seems like it's a con. It's like, oh, if you want to read and learn about the great stock market crash in America of 1929, you want to learn about the Great Depression, this isn't like the standard, essential, hard-hitting historian take on things where everything is rooted in a primary source document, which, everything is rooted, as far as I know, in a primary source document, because, it goes to the other side of the coin, which is where this book is very thoroughly researched. There are tons of endnotes. The sources are very detailed and elaborate. So it kind of gets both sides of that. So it is a very humanistic, I don't know what the right word is, but it's a very human take on the stock market crash of 1929 and the lead up to the Great Depression, and sort of elaborating on how the Great Depression wasn't just this immediate, obvious outcome of the stock market crash in the fall of 1929, but it was kind of part of a larger narrative. And then it's very centered on the human characters who were involved in that, looking at them as characters. And the very end of the book kind of touches on, I'll make a book review of 1929 as its own video, but Andrew Ross Sorkin, the author, he mentions how, this is something that stands out to me, how like every single generation isn't exempt from certain aspects of human nature. He didn't say it exactly in those words, but it's like, the people who were the Wall Street titans of the great stock market crash were inevitably not, they're not these like stereotypes of greedy people who don't care about the masses. I mean, obviously there is an aspect of like disconnect to a certain extent from people who aren't, these financiers and bankers, or, people in Washington and government, politicians. There is an element of greed, but it paints the narrative in a way where you see them as like, if you were in their circumstances, if you were those people, you can understand why they did things the way that they did. It's a different time period, and it gives a very balanced look at the people involved as characters, like Charlie Mitchell, Livermore, Glass, Stiegel, Herbert Hoover, and so on. So I enjoyed the book. Just a little bit under 500 pages. It was like 450 pages with like the epilogue afterward, and like I read the acknowledgments and everything, which it gives a bigger picture on like Andrew Ross Sorkin's approach and how he was very like thorough to being faithful to the historical primary source documents and whatnot. So I finished that one up, and then I read from Not Even Wrong by Peter Voigt, which is a great read so far. I just got to the point, I'm like approximately halfway through. So I'm at the point where he's built up the story from his perspective as like a mathematician, or more, he's like, now people look at him as like, oh, he's this, lecturer in physics and all that. But like his background is like heavily mathematical. So he has this sort of like, not exactly an outsider's view, but it's sort of as like, he's a mathematician who has, over the course of his early career, been like inundated with physicists. And so he gives his perspective on the development over the last several decades, like half a century and stuff, of the development of the standard model of physics, right? Of like elementary particles. And there's, the book started off with talking about what are the, he gives it almost like a Marxist, I don't want to be ideological, but it's like he kind of makes this like tongue-in-cheek parallel to like the means of production, of how like big particle colliders and stuff are the empirical basis for validating these theoretical physics models. But then immediately after like the first one or two chapters where he does that, it's like very deep, well, not very deeply, but it's like delving into the physics of things, but from that kind of like mathematical perspective. So like the first half of the book, he basically like omits, or doesn't really omit, but it's looking at everything leading up to string theory. And then towards the part where I'm at this like halfway point through the book, it's like the character of Ed Witten is coming to the forefront. Like the end of the chapter I was reading, so it's like chapter 10, right before chapter 11, which is chapter 11 on string theory, okay? Ed Witten, in chapter 10, he had just gotten like the Fields Medal, which is like the Nobel Prize for mathematicians, arguably alongside the new Abel Prize. So now in the second half of the book, string theory, it's going to be like the Ed Witten show, right? So like, but already it's like talking about the topological invariant models and all this kind of stuff, where Ed Witten was coming up with these, I guess you could say, quantum field theory inspired or motivated results in physics, which then downstream of that led to breakthroughs in mathematics. And, it's like him Ed Witten consolidating his reputation as being kind of like this towering figure in physics because of like what and it's like, in order to win or be awarded the Fields Medal, you have to be under 40 years old. So it's like huge flex for Ed Witten, because it's like in the book, Peter Voigt is like rolling out, oh, here's, the history of the standard model and stuff. It's a bit of a dumpster fire. Those are my words, not his. And Ed Witten is like, this up and coming, he's this young guy on the scene. He's like winning the Fields Medal and all this stuff. And it's like, we haven't even gotten to the string theory chapters yet. So, but my only like criticism, and it kind of goes back to how it's just my personal preference. I really like hard hitting nonfiction, you know me, differential geometry reading stream guy. You got to give me the equations, bro. It's like, if you're not showing me the equations, I'm like, why are you hiding this from me? You know what I mean? Like, just give me the straight dope already. And it makes me think that probably after I finish Not Even Wrong, I'm going to get Peter Voigt's Springer Verlag published like textbook on it. My take is, it's like, I forgot what the title is, but it's like group theory and quantum field theory, Lie groups, like all the stuff he's basically been talking about in Not Even Wrong. But it's like the hard hitting, like, okay, we're going to get down to brass tacks here. We're going to be like, this is for the hardcore audience, which I don't consider myself necessarily like part of the hardcore audience, but like, I'm going to be sitting in the back of the hardcore audience, like keeping tabs on everyone who's in the hardcore audience. And I'm going to be still taking notes and stuff. And I'm not going to turn in my homework assignments on time, and I'm going to skip the exam, but I'm going to be paying attention nonetheless. That's kind of like my perspective on it. So it's like, after I finish Not Even Wrong, I'm probably going to get Peter Voigt's textbook that goes into a lot of this stuff. Because it's like, after differential geometry, the Kreisig book, an obvious follow-up was to read about like gauge theory, because Hermann Weyl, as some of you may know, so Hermann Weyl was like mixed physicist, mathematician, German guy, sort of like, he was like really old, or like kind of like at the end of his career when World War II was coming around. But Hermann Weyl actually, so like obviously Hermann Weyl is after Bernard Riemann, but Hermann Weyl actually coined, or like put the box around the modern, what is now the modern definition of a manifold, right? So like, okay, Gauss, he was doing all of his stuff. Bernard Riemann, he took it to the next level. Okay, curvature, all that. And in a modern sense now, we're like, okay, well, how do, in differential geometry, how do curvature and topology influence or interact with each other, all this sort of stuff. It's like we sort of take for granted the historical aspects. And like Hermann Weyl, yeah, he came up with the modern definition, put the box around what we now call a manifold, but also being that he was part, mix of mathematician and physicist, there was all that stuff about like gauge theory stuff, and like not all of it gets carried into all of the work in gauge theories and stuff. This is my understanding right now at this current moment. It didn't all get like carried forward, vindicated, validated into now like the modern elementary particle standard model of physics and all this. But it's like still Hermann Weyl's work was like a brick in the wall that now, we're standing on the shoulders of giants to see what our own fallible, limited understanding of the standard model of elementary particles is now, because of, Hermann Weyl is one of those giants. He put one of the bricks in the wall that we're standing on, that we're still slapping more layers of bricks on top of to get a better understanding. So it's like, I got Space, Time, and Matter. I also got, what's it called? Concept of a Riemann surface, right? Okay, both by Hermann Weyl. And it's like, those are, in my mind, they're definitely essential reads on my list in my self-study of theoretical physics. If I'm being honest with you, it's like, what's the difference between me taking classes at like whatever master's degree program, PhD program, like they're just like taking classes, like being some like visiting lecturer and I'm going to, sit in or audit these courses. What's the difference between that and me self-studying? Okay. Because if I am taking a class, I'm not going to be paying attention, or I don't learn optimally from like the pedagogical, someone's sitting up there running through the lecture slides. Okay, tell you go home and read these, pages, or here's the lecture notes, and then come back and here are the problems, do the problems, hand them in, and then you're going to get a grade on them and all. It's like, that is like literally not how I optimally learn. It's like some might say I'm not able to force myself to do that, but like when I'm taking classes, when I was taking classes or whatnot, it's like I would, like, the information transfer getting into my head and me understanding this stuff would come from doing what I do now, which is like sitting at home reading books and like thinking about this stuff on my own. And then it's like, if I get stuck, I wouldn't even go in and ask questions. Okay, that was maybe one of my downfalls in academia, but it's like, there are so many resources online, and I just, like, I'm not going to say it's like introversion, extroversion, blah, 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 this and that, but it's like, long-winded rant aside, what's the difference between me taking a formal class, yes, headmaster, no headmaster, and like me sitting here and like, being Mr. Crackpot and like, I'm just going to read whatever I'm curious about. And, I have enough, like, of a base in the fundamentals. I feel like I can write MATLAB code and stuff like that and do all this stuff. And I'm not scared of reading the math equations, and it's like, if I want to tinker, build some electronics, I'm going to freaking do it, dude. I've got a credit card. I've got a job. I can afford to buy more little breakout boards, Arduino, Raspberry Pi, hibbity hoobla, skibbity toilet, 6-7, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to do it. Right, bro? Anyways, so I'm going to go cook and do some more reading. So I'm not going to watch the Super Bowl. Do I seem like a guy who watches the Super Bowl to you? Come on. Anyways.